I'd like to start with a question. Thinking back to the last time you bought a clothes washer or refrigerator, what was the most important factor in your decision? Was it the features, the appearance, the size, or was it the price? And if price was your single most important consideration, were you shopping at the $400 to $500 price point? Because unless you answered yes to the last two questions, I want to let you know right now that you are not in the other half that we're talking about today. And if the term other half sounds familiar, and maybe even slightly pejorative, that's because it's from the 19th century, from the title of a very famous book of photographs by a man named Jacob Riis called How the Other Half Lives. Riis used a new tool, the flashbulb, to make visible that which was previously invisible, the impoverished living conditions of immigrants on New York's Lower East Side. Riis's pictures changed the way people thought about immigrants, about their city, and ultimately social policy. For me, pictures like this can have a similar effect of making the invisible visible. Our tool is retail sales data, and this is a scatter plot of clothes washer sales at 3 stores of a national retailer over a 6-month period, plotted by sales volume and price. Each dot is one clothes washer model. Now, right away, we can see something we may have suspected, but could not have known for certain. Because the fact that clothes washers vary in price is easily observable. But we now see that there's also a wide range in sales volume. So we have models like this one with a very high price and very low sales volume. It's not just a front loader, it's also a top loader. It sells for about $1,500 and it has a setting called Power Foam. And there's models like this one with a very low cost and very high sales volume. It's the best-selling clothes washer by far, and it's basically a white box that washes your clothes. And so is this one, and so is this one. When I first started looking at these data, I asked one of the retailers, what is it about these models that people like so much? And they kind of chuckled and said, no one buys these because they want to. No one buys these because they want to. Here's something else we can see in these data. There's a relationship between sales volume and price. As price decreases, sales volume increases. And if we take a look at just the lowest priced washers in the data set, those under $500, what we find is that even though they're only about 1/3 of all models, they comprise half of all sales. So here's yet another thing we can learn from these data, that we can probably dispense with the misconception that low-priced products are just a niche market. Now, if this seems surprising, it could be because for those not in the other half of Americans who we can call bargain shoppers, these low-priced products are nearly invisible. With retail sales floors organized by price point, it's possible to do our shopping and never even notice the low-priced models. And when retailers and manufacturers choose images to illustrate things like website menus, the white boxes are not the ones they choose. But when we put this finding into the larger context of today's economy, it makes perfect sense. Nobody buys these products because they want to. Now, if you've been waiting to see where all this is going and why it's relevant to you, someone who cares about energy use, here is the big reveal. There is a stark contrast between Energy Star market share among our cheapest washers and everything else. This is not just about Energy Star. There is a meaningful difference in energy use. The sales-weighted unit energy consumption of the cheapest washers is 44% higher. Now this is an opportunity, and it's the foundation of the shift model. The shift model is just the name I've given to an approach to program design that has 3 key elements. First, use sales data to plot sales volume by model and identify the best-selling, inefficient products. Then identify a comparable but more efficient product and focus your activities on shifting sales from the inefficient to the efficient product. And this is what we've been doing in Northern Colorado for the last 18 months, in the first implementation of the shift approach. Platte River Power Authority implements the program for its owner municipalities of Fort Collins, Loveland, Longmont, and Estes Park. We've been working with both a national and regional retailer, 3 stores in total. In both cases, the baseline models we identified were the best-selling inefficient washers in the store, and either the second or fourth best-selling washer overall, with a price point around $450. The efficient models we selected were from the same manufacturer as the baseline model, and just one step up in the manufacturer's product line. Now, before we started, the regional retailer didn't have the efficient model on the sales floor, but we were able to work with them to get them to bring it to the floor along with its matching dryer. The efficient models use about half the water as the baseline models and have about 130 kWh in nameplate savings. Of course, this comes at a cost of $50 to $100. But for us, the key cost metric isn't the absolute dollar cost, rather the percentage price premium the customer has to pay. That's the incremental cost as a fraction of the total cost. The price premium for these models can be up to 20%. Because our program theory says that cost is the most important barrier for buyers of these products, one of our most important tactics is a point of sale markdown, calibrated to reduce incremental cost. During the first 12 months, we used the markdown to bring the customer's price premium down to a maximum of 4%. In the field, this program looks a lot like any other rebate program, with a few small tweaks. There's POP like this, but we put it on both the baseline and the comparable efficient models. There's training for sales associates, reinforced with regular in-person check-ins, and we were able to get the retailers to rearrange the sales floor to put the efficient model next to the baseline model, so it's easier for customers to compare. The answer to this question is yes, and quite well. Sales of the incented models rose substantially, and they became the best-selling and second best-selling washers in the stores. At the national retailer, where we have pre-data and can calculate the percentage change, we find a 192% increase in market share as a result of the shift promotion. Sales of the baseline models, formerly some of the best-selling washers in the store, declined precipitously and, in fact, were nearly eliminated. Here's a number you've seen before, the market share of Energy Star washers in the targeted under $500 category before shift. During the first year, we got that up to 39%. The regional retailer has a business model that focuses on closeouts and older models, and it allows them to sell slightly more feature-rich products at lower prices. And we see that in their baseline Energy Star market share was higher than at the national retailer. Still, we were able to increase it by 15%. We can also look at the change in sales from the perspective of sales-weighted unit energy consumption. At both the national and regional retailers, we see a big decline in our targeted under $500 category. In contrast, in the over $500 category, we see a much smaller decline at the national retailer and even a slight increase in energy consumption at the regional retailer. And we can see the impact of our work bringing down the unit energy consumption of all washers sold by these retailers. One last way we can look at the impact of shift is by comparing the unit energy consumption of under versus over $500 washers. Before the pilot at our national retailer, under $500 models had a UEC that was 44% higher than their more expensive counterparts, despite being, for the most part, smaller machines. During the pilot, we got that difference down to 28%. The spread was even larger at the regional retailer, and we brought that down as well to 40%. After all those numbers, I want to take just a minute to talk about what retailers think about this approach. I told the national retailer I was going to be doing this presentation and asked them to send me a couple sentences on what they find valuable in the shift approach, and this is what they said. To be honest, it's not what I expected. I thought they'd talk about the benefits to gross sales or margins. But it actually makes sense, because while Shift is a very cost-effective way to run an appliance program, it also has important equity benefits, because it gives access to efficiency to lower and middle-income households and landlords, who are the buyers of these small, cheap, feature-poor appliances. And when we think about equity, what we're doing is looking at a program from the customer's point of view. And really, that's what retailers do all the time. They're experts at thinking like customers. So what's next for Shift? Platte River is launching the promotion at another national retailer and adding refrigerator and room AC measures. We're also looking into clothes dryer measures. Energy Trust is launching their statewide program, starting with clothes washers. And together, Platte River and Energy Trust have initiated something we're calling the Shift Consortium. a voluntary alignment among program sponsors to share knowledge, avoid duplicating efforts, reduce administrative costs, and, importantly, increase market power. Because we all know the impact of any individual program sponsor is limited, but working together opens up new possibilities. Could we, for example, work with retailers and manufacturers such that every low-priced washer is Energy Star? Could we bring to market a front loader that competes on price with the cheapest washers in the store? Or an Energy Star dryer that can be paired with all these efficient washers we're now selling? Because of all the things we've learned during the first year and a half in the field with Shift, to me the most important is that we have the power to create demand. So the question is, how will we use it?